Tom Brady is easily one of the biggest NFL players of all time and gained fame for his time in the sport and some of the things outside of it. His career has been full of some controversial moments and some really embarrassing ones. Today, we'll discuss Tom Brady's most controversial moments revealed. You will not want to miss this list. First up is grudge match game. If you didn't know already, Tom Brady played for the Patriots during his career. In 2003, Tom and his team didn't have a great game ahead of them. They stepped into his next match facing the Buffalo Bills, but this was the first game of the season that they had barely even gotten into in the first place. They didn't have a great time ahead of them. Brady led his team against the Bills and it didn't go well. He went and played one of the worst games of his pro career as he threw around 4 interceptions and had no touchdowns. What a terrible match. It was controversial because he was outplayed by Drew Bledsoe, who everyone wanted to lead the Patriots instead of Brady. Next up is not being drafted until the last minute. This next controversial moment is based around the way Tom Brady was drafted all the way back in the 2000 NFL draft. We were waiting and waiting and waiting for them to say his name in the draft. Everyone knew he was an amazing player and an even better leader, but the draft team wasn't really looking for someone like him back then. It took until the 6th round of the draft for his name to be called out and for him to be picked to join the NFL. This was pretty controversial because he should have been an easy pick. This late picking fueled his career as he used it to create motivation and it made him a Hall of Famer. Next up is embarrassing playoffs in their hometown. Our next controversial moment is based around a terrible game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Patriots. The game wasn't looking good even before it began. The Patriots seemingly had no emotion in the match and could even execute anything from start of the match. The Baltimore Ravens ended up having Ray Rice run through all of the Patriots defense and end up with an 83-yard touchdown. This was controversial for Tom Brady as he was known for coming through in the playoffs and leading his team to victory, but he had one of the worst matches in his career and ruined his team's morale. Next up is a Miami meltdown. This one just wasn't a good look for Brady and it really showed everyone the worst side of him as a leader. In 2004, the Patriots had a so-called easy game set up with the Miami Dolphins. They rolled into Miami with their heads high, thinking they had an easy game ahead of them. This was very true. Up until the 4th quarter of the match, they were demolishing them. The Patriots were up 5 points and there were only 2 minutes left until the match's end. This was an easy win for them. They had always done this at that time. This was until Tom Brady intercepted in an attack he was advised not to. This bad throw led Miami to gain enough points to win the match and overtake the Patriots. What a bad time for them. Next up is losing to their biggest rival. This next controversial moment in Tom Brady's career was when his team lost to their longtime rivals. For decades now, the Patriots and the Jets had been playing against each other and their rivalry had been at an all-time high for years. During a match that they were set to demolish, the Patriots lost really hard. For weeks until the match, they had their heads up high and they knew they were going to win against their rivals. This didn't happen. They lost this match in an embarrassing and controversial moment at the time. The final scores were 28-21 in favor of the Jets. This just wasn't a great game for them and it really showed them they acted really embarrassed later on. Next up is 2006 championship game. Around 2006, Tom Brady had been hyped up by so many people as almost a god in the sport. He was so good at everything and everyone loved him. No one had any fear that he was going to lose this 2006 championship. Everyone knew it was in his favor and they were going to demolish their opponents. Every football fan who loved Tom Brady had pure confidence in his skill to bring his championship home. But nothing really went to plan in this match. Brady threw towards Marlon Jackson and it sealed the loss for Tom Brady's team. This throw really threw the game away and reminded everyone that Tom Brady wasn't some god, but he was a human like everyone else. Next up is Super Bowl 42. Here's another controversial moment from Tom Brady. The Super Bowl 42 was amazing for so many football fans, but anyone who loves Tom Brady and the Patriots thinks of this and has some really bad memories. And there's no doubt that even the man himself, Tom Brady, hates thinking about it. This was easily one of the most controversial moments of his career as he really let everyone down. This specific Super Bowl should have been a great time for the Patriots. It was the first time we saw Tom Brady step into that huge stage and actually come out worse. Brady had no chance against the Giants in their game together and he was just out-pressured by their rushing. Brady really left a bad mark on the history of football that day. Next up is knee injury. 2008 was meant to be the best year of Tom Brady's career. He was set to take off and become one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the game and cement himself as one of the best players the game had ever seen up until that point. Sadly, the season was cut short for Tom Brady after a very controversial moment took place. In the start of the 2008 season, Tom Brady fell with a knee injury that Bernard Pollard of the Kansas City Chiefs gave to him. The play that gave him the injury eventually became illegal due to the possible injury it could cause. Brady was left with a short season and he was absent from the game. This was very controversial at the time as Brady lost a great opportunity in his career. And finally, we have the weird GOAT picture. This one's a little weird and is a departure from the rest of this list, but it's still relevant to Tom Brady's spotty and controversial career, as well as everything we've covered. This controversial moment comes from an image that surfaced during his upcoming career. Brady had obviously been a normal guy before he was drafted into the NFL. This image surfaced of him holding a goat and looking seductively into the camera as if to sell this goat. The photo turned out to be from the cover of My Pet Goat. This was just weird and everyone made fun of him at the time. Another controversial moment for this controversial player. And that's the end of this list. The NFL has seen some amazing players come and go, but Tom Brady is easily the most recognizable and one of the biggest players in the NFL of all time. No matter what people may think of him, he has had such an incredible impact on this sport. He brought an entire new generation with him when he came into fame, and he introduced so many people to this amazing sport with his actions over time. Tom Brady has had some great moments throughout his career, but sadly, he has also had some really poor and even really bad ones. We obviously covered his controversial moments in this list, but that's not to say he hasn't done any good. There wouldn't be a list without him being a phenomenal player. The reason these controversial moments are so bad is that they stand out amongst his amazing moments. Tom Brady's an amazing player who comes out with these great plays and some game-winning performances. He takes over the game he plays in and just allows his team to win with ease. The controversial moments we covered are the ones that show everyone that he's human. As he said earlier, people thought of him as some god of football. He was so good and everyone loved him. He was worshipped in the sport as one of the best players in history. But every time people saw him at his worst, like we covered today, they realized that he's just a normal guy. Tom Brady may be some amazing player and easily one of the best players of all time, but he's still human. He made some big mistakes in his career and he has paid for them with some outstanding losses over time. But without doubt, Tom Brady is a legend in the NFL and American football as a sport. That's the end of the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Bye.